Imagine working your way up from nothing for 5 long years, breaking your back to build a logistics company from scratch, and finally buying a luxury mansion for your family. But in the eyes of your in-laws, you are not a husband. You are nothing more than a walking ATM. The breaking point comes tonight. At the dinner table, a mad ultimatum is delivered. Buy your brother-in-law a $1 million sports car, or get out of this house and divorce my daughter. They think Daniel Carter, the husband, will beg on his knees, terrified of losing his wife. They think Daniel is just another dull businessman without the guts to fight back. But they forget one thing. The quietest man usually has the deadliest plan. This is a story about dignity that cannot be bought with luxury car keys. A story about breaking free from a parasitic family with elegance. Before the story begins, don't forget to comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Like and subscribe so Stories with Meaning can continue bringing you powerful stories like this. The clinking of silver spoons against Italian porcelain was the only music filling the grand dining room. Daniel Carter, wearing a simple rolled-up flannel shirt, chewed his steak slowly. To him, food was nourishment, not a stage for social theater. But to his wife's family, this dining table was a negotiation table, more accurately, a refined extortion chamber. "Daniel?" The sharp voice of Margaret Wilson shattered the silence. She sat at the head of the table, draped in a silk lounge dress worth enough to cover a factory worker's motorcycle payments for a year. A diamond necklace sparkled around her wrinkling neck with every calculated movement. "You know what?" she said smugly. "Linda from my social group was bragging on WhatsApp. Her son-in-law, only 2 years into a foreign company, just bought his wife a brand new BMW. That's what filial devotion looks like." Daniel responded calmly, barely lifting his eyes. "Well, good for them if they can afford it, ma'am." His indifference poured gasoline under the fire burning in Margaret's chest. She slammed her fork onto the plate, loudly, intentionally. Emily Carter, Daniel's wife, immediately squeezed his hand under the table, a silent warning not to escalate. "Good for them?" Margaret laughed coldly. "Our family has standards. We are a respected family in this neighborhood. But look at you, successful logistics tycoon, yet you drive a boring family SUV. What will the neighbors think?" Beside her sat Ryan Wilson, Daniel's 25-year-old brother-in-law who had never experienced the pain of earning money. With bleached hair like a K-pop idol and a designer jacket, he finally looked up from his phone. "Yeah, bro," Ryan whined. "I'm building my personal brand as a young entrepreneur on Instagram. How can I do that riding Uber or some old junk car? I need a sports car, at least a Porsche 911 or a used Lamborghini. It boosts credibility. Investors care about image." Daniel nearly choked on his water. "Credibility is built on work, Ryan, not on what you drive," Daniel replied coolly. "If you want a sports car, manage the warehouse project I offered you. Succeed, and you can start by buying the tires." Ryan's face soured instantly. He shot his mother a warning look. "Daniel," Margaret snapped, "don't be stingy. Money doesn't go with you to the grave. Ryan is Emily's only brother. If he succeeds, you benefit too. You just won a major port contract. Don't tell me you don't have the money." Daniel placed his napkin on the table and looked directly at her, calm, controlled, intimidating. He knew exactly how much money sat in his accounts. He also knew this mansion, her jewelry, and Ryan's allowance all came from his pocket. But there was a line between supporting family and being milked by greed. "I have money," Daniel said firmly, "but I have no reason to buy Ryan a sports car. That's not a need. It's an irrational desire for someone without income." Emily finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Daniel, please, I don't want us to break apart over a car." Daniel inhaled deeply, scanning the mansion he built with his sweat, yet felt like a cold prison. A plan began forming in his mind. a plan to prove who truly controlled his life. "We'll see," Daniel replied quietly. He stood up, left Emily crying, and walked into his study. This was no longer about a sports car. It was about the price of freedom.
"I already promised my community friends," Ryan snapped impatiently, "that next week I'll show up with a brand new car at the Sunday morning ride event." He smirked, then turned toward his mother. "See that, Mom? Daniel is doing this on purpose. He wants to embarrass me." Margaret Wilson stared at Daniel with a gaze cold enough to freeze water. "Remember my ultimatum last night, Daniel," she said sharply. "Emily cried all night because of your stubborn attitude. She told me she's ashamed to have a husband her own family considers stingy." Her voice dropped, lethal and precise. "If that car isn't in this garage by next week, don't expect to sleep in the master bedroom again. I'll make sure the divorce papers reach your office before lunchtime." Daniel fell silent. His eyes shifted to Emily, who had just descended the staircase, her eyes swollen from crying. She didn't defend him. She didn't speak. She only looked at him with pleading eyes, begging him to surrender and obey her mother. And in that moment, something inside Daniel broke. Not because he feared divorce, but because he finally realized he had spent years living among people who loved his wallet, not him. "All right," Daniel said quietly. Ryan's eyes lit up instantly. "Seriously, bro? You're buying it for me?" Margaret smiled in triumph. "Now that's more like it. That's what a proper son-in-law looks like." Daniel did not smile. He looked at them one by one, his gaze unreadable. "There will be a surprise in this garage next week," he said calmly. "But remember, every choice has consequences. Don't regret what you asked for." Without waiting for a response, Daniel walked out of the house. He got into his modest but well-maintained family MPV, started the engine, and drove away. Inside the car, he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Hello, counselor. Yes, this is Daniel Carter. Please prepare the documents we discussed yesterday. And one more thing, contact a real estate agent. I want a full audit of every asset under my name in that house." A thin smile formed on his face as he merged into New York traffic. For the first time in years, he thought, I'm finally holding the steering wheel of my own life. That night, the master bedroom felt larger and colder than ever. The lavender aromatherapy that usually soothed him now smelled like forced medication. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, still in his work shirt, staring at the darkness beyond the glass windows overlooking the glittering lights of Manhattan. The bathroom door opened. Emily stepped out wearing a maroon silk nightrobe. She walked softly and sat beside him. Daniel hated being shouted at, so she chose a different tactic: gentleness. "Daniel?" she whispered sweetly. Her arm wrapped around his, her head resting on his shoulder. "Are you still angry about this morning?" Daniel didn't move. "I'm not angry, Emily. I'm disappointed." "I know," she sighed, a carefully rehearsed sigh meant to sound exhausted and hurt. "I know Mom and Ryan went too far, but you have to understand my position. I'm the only daughter. In our family, honor is everything." She lifted her head slightly. "If Ryan gets mocked for not having a nice car, it's not just him who's embarrassed, it's me. People will say, 'Look at Emily. Her husband is rich but lets her brother struggle.'" "Struggle?" Daniel repeated slowly, looking into her teary eyes. "Ryan isn't struggling. He's healthy, educated, living in a luxury house rent-free. Struggling is not being able to eat. A sports car is a luxury, not a basic need." Emily pulled away slightly, wiping imaginary tears for dramatic effect. "You always talk about logic, Daniel, but marriage isn't just logic, it's feelings. Don't you love me anymore? Don't you feel sorry seeing me pressured by my mother?" She lowered her voice. "She has a heart condition, Daniel. If she collapses because she's stressed about the family's reputation, will you take responsibility?" Daniel almost laughed. He knew Margaret could walk through malls for 5 hours straight without breaking a sweat. "So you want me to buy the car just so your mother won't overthink?" Daniel asked flatly. "Not just that." Emily moved closer again, gripping his hand tightly, her voice seductive. "Think of it as an investment in our peace. Once Ryan gets the car, Mom will calm down, Ryan will be happy, and we can go back to how things were. Remember Paris? Our vacations without stress? I miss that." Daniel glanced at the 5-carat diamond ring on her finger, a wedding anniversary gift from last year. And then it hit him. Emily wasn't defending him. She was bribing him with memories, trying to trade his dignity for comfort. She feared losing luxury and social status more than losing her husband's principles. "Daniel, have I ever denied you anything? Bags, shoes, trips, even this house for your mother. I gave it all." "But this time is different. This isn't about money, it's about my dignity as a man. I refuse to be controlled by threats." Emily's expression shifted instantly. The softness vanished, replaced with irritation. "Threats? Mom isn't threatening you, she's being honest. If you can't protect this family's reputation, what's the point of us being together?" Her voice rose. "In my social circle, every husband buys luxury cars for their wives or families. I'm the only one who has to explain why my husband still drives a boring MPV to work." "So that's it," Daniel said calmly, releasing her hand. "You're ashamed because I refuse to show off." "I'm ashamed because you refuse to level up," Emily snapped, standing. "We're rich, Daniel. Stop acting like a laborer counting pennies. The choice is simple. Buy the car, praise Mom, and we stay the perfect admired couple. Or cling to your ego and let this marriage collapse. I'm serious. If Mom says divorce, I have no choice but to obey." Daniel stood up as well. The woman in front of him felt like a stranger. The simple woman he married had evolved into a perfect replica of her mother. "You're right, Emily," Daniel said with a thin, icy smile. "The choice is simple, and I've decided. Tomorrow I'll take care of everything." Emily's eyes sparkled. She thought she'd won. She hugged him tightly. "I knew it. You won't let me be humiliated, right? Red car, okay? Ryan will love it." Daniel did not return the hug. He only patted her back emptily. "Go to sleep, Emily. Tomorrow will be a very long day." After she fell asleep with a victorious smile, Daniel left the room. He entered his study, turned on the computer, and opened a secret folder containing years of financial records, every dollar he had poured into his wife's family. He also opened a draft of the prenuptial agreement, one that contained a loophole he could now use to secure his core assets. "She said she had no choice but to obey her mother," Daniel murmured, staring at the screen. "Then I have no choice but to free myself." He texted his personal assistant. "Clear my schedule tomorrow morning. Prepare a towing service. Bring all property certificates from the office safe to the house at 10 a.m. The real show was about to begin. Morning sunlight filtered through silk curtains in the family living room, but it couldn't warm the icy atmosphere. An impromptu family meeting was underway. Margaret sat regally in an embroidered gold tunic, as if attending a royal court. Ryan lounged beside her, chewing gum obnoxiously, holding a tablet displaying a bright yellow sports car. "I've contacted the dealer, Mom," Ryan said casually. "If we pay the down payment today, delivery can be tomorrow. I already promised my friends I'll show it off at the cafe this weekend." Margaret nodded, then turned to Daniel as he descended the staircase. "Sit down, Daniel." It was a command, not an invitation. Daniel remained standing. He placed his work bag on the marble table, right on top of the scattered car brochures. "I don't have much time, Margaret. I have an important meeting." "More important than your marriage?" Margaret's voice rose theatrically. "Emily told me everything. You're still being stubborn about Ryan's car. She begged you all night. Do you have no compassion for your poor wife?" Emily, seated on the couch, let out a soft sob, shoulders trembling convincingly. Daniel knew better. "Compassion has nothing to do with buying a Lamborghini," Daniel replied flatly. "I've provided everything Emily needs. Ryan is not my responsibility. If he wants the car, he can earn it." Margaret slammed her hand on the marble table, rattling the teacups. "Enough! I'm sick of your moral lectures. Who do you think you are? You're just an outsider lucky enough to marry into this family. Without our family name, your business would mean nothing in high society." Daniel smiled faintly, a smile sharp enough to hurt. "Your family name?" Daniel replied calmly. "Forgive my honesty, but for the past 5 years, that name has lived off my bank account. The property tax on this house? The garden maintenance? Even your driver's salary. Who paid for all of that?"
Margaret Wilson's face turned pale for a split second before flushing crimson with overwhelming humiliation. Ryan jumped to his feet as well, his fragile pride deeply offended. "Hey man, don't get cocky," Ryan snapped. "You're just lucky you married Emily. Without her, you'd be nothing but a dull logistics businessman with zero style." Margaret took a long breath, forcing herself to regain control. She knew she couldn't win with logic, so she would win with emotion. She walked over to Emily and wrapped an arm around her daughter's shoulders in a protective gesture. "Emily, listen to me," Margaret said loudly, making sure Daniel heard every word. "I refuse to have a son-in-law who doesn't respect family. A man who's stingy towards his own brother-in-law will never be able to protect his wife's honor." She turned sharply towards Daniel, eyes burning with hatred. "Listen carefully, Daniel. This is my final ultimatum as the queen of this house. You have until sunset today. There are only 2 choices." She raised one finger. "First, you bring proof of transfer or the keys to that sports car, and we forget all this nonsense. You remain my beloved son-in-law, and Emily remains your wife." She paused deliberately, letting the tension suffocate the room. "Or, second, you walk out of this house right now. You divorce Emily and leave without taking a single dollar of wealth that entered this house. All assets, vehicles, and comforts you've enjoyed here will be taken as compensation for the time Emily wasted with you." She leaned forward, voice cutting like glass. "Choose, Daniel, a Lamborghini for Ryan, or your marriage certificate is burned today." Silence swallowed the room. Emily slowly looked up at Daniel, her eyes silently asking, "You won't choose to leave, right?" She was certain Daniel loved her too much and feared losing social status too deeply to walk away. Ryan smiled slyly, confident he'd soon be holding the keys to his dream car. To them, Daniel was nothing more than a walking ATM, one that could be threatened at will. Daniel looked at them one by one. He saw greed in his mother-in-law's eyes, laziness in his brother-in-law's, and betrayal in his wife's. And suddenly, the heavy burden he had carried for years evaporated. The threat didn't scare him. It freed him. "Ma'am?" Daniel asked softly. "Yes, and don't you dare negotiate," Margaret challenged. Daniel nodded slightly. He picked up his work bag and straightened his suit jacket. "Thank you for the clarity," Daniel said calmly. "I don't need until sunset. I already have my answer." Ryan let out a small cheer. "So, what color, bro? Red or yellow?" Daniel ignored him. He looked at Emily one last time, his gaze distant, unfamiliar. "Emily, do you truly agree with your mother's decision?" Emily hesitated, but then she saw her mother give a sharp signal. "I'm sorry, Daniel, but Mom is right. If you love me, you shouldn't be calculating with my family." Daniel took a deep breath. "Very well. Wait here. I'll be back before lunchtime with a gift appropriate for all of you." Without waiting for a response, Daniel walked out, his steps light, his head clear. He didn't look back. In his mind, every legal step was already calculated. Margaret laughed smugly. "See, he's bluffing. In the end, he'll kneel at my feet. Ryan, prepare your best outfit. This afternoon, we're going to the showroom." The three of them laughed, celebrating a false victory at a dining table that would soon witness the collapse of their fabricated lifestyle. Outside, the roaring life of the Port of Newark thundered on. Inside his office, Daniel heard only the steady rhythm of his own heartbeat, calm for the first time in years. He poured water into a crystal glass and watched condensation form on the surface, just like Emily's tears that morning, now clearly nothing more than a performance to preserve comfort. Daniel opened a file on his laptop titled Carter Logistics Private Ledger, a record no one, not Emily, not Margaret, had ever seen. Month 12, renovation of Margaret's house, already in excellent condition, $250,000. Month 24, capital for Ryan's clothing startup, bankrupt in 3 months, $300,000. Month 36, luxury European vacation for 4 at Margaret's request, $450,000. The total was enough to buy 10 sports cars Ryan dreamed of. Daniel smiled bitterly. He had made the classic mistake of a successful man, believing money could buy peace and respect. Instead, he had raised a monster of greed that now wanted to devour him alive. Knock, knock. The office door opened. Michael Parker, Daniel's trusted attorney since his early days owning just one single truck, entered with a serious expression. He placed his briefcase on the desk. "Everything is ready, Daniel," Michael said. "I reviewed the ownership deed of the mansion. As per your instruction last year, the property is legally registered under Carter Logistics Group, not your personal name." Daniel nodded. "And the cars? Emily's luxury bags and jewelry?" Michael adjusted his glasses. "Legally, they're considered gifts. However, since they were purchased using corporate accounts as representation expenses, we can classify them as company assets loaned to executives' family members, unless they can prove written personal grants." Daniel spoke flatly. "My mother-in-law said if I don't buy the Lamborghini, I must leave without taking a single asset." Michael chuckled darkly. "They forgot who owns the keys, Daniel. They think marriage is an employment contract where they're the bosses. In reality, financially, they're just ungrateful tenants." Daniel stood by the big window overlooking rows of shipping containers bearing his company logo. He remembered sleeping inside trucks, eating instant noodles by the roadside, facing illegal fees in the field. He did all of it so Emily never had to. He wanted her to be proud of him, but she was only proud of what his money could buy. "Michael," Daniel said quietly, "prepare the divorce documents. Include a clause stating I will not claim any marital assets, but I will withdraw all company assets currently used by them. The house, the cars, every facility paid by the firm. We're giving them the freedom they asked for." "Are you sure, Daniel?" Michael asked. "Emily may collapse." "She collapsed the moment she allowed her mother to dictate her husband's dignity," Daniel replied firmly. "She said she had no choice but to obey her mother. Now I'm giving her the most real choice of her life. Follow her mother and live with empty prestige, or stand beside me as a wife. And we both know what she'll choose." Daniel checked his phone. A WhatsApp message from Ryan appeared, showing a sports car interior. Caption: "Red seats, bro.
Makes me look like a real king." Daniel didn't reply. He blocked Ryan's number instantly. "Send a legal eviction notice tomorrow morning, right after I leave that house for good. Tonight, I'll enjoy my last dinner there." He closed his laptop with a decisive click. The sadness from earlier had transformed into profound relief. Buying Ryan a Lamborghini might buy peace for a month. Leaving them bought peace for a lifetime. This was no longer about cars or marriage certificates. This was about ending a fraudulent investment in heartless people. That night, the grand ballroom of the Astoria Hotel, Manhattan, glittered with silk gowns, jewels, and suffocating clouds of expensive perfume. This was the annual Diamond Circle Charity Gala, attended by Margaret and her elite social circle. For Margaret, this was not charity. It was a battlefield where power was measured by sons-in-law's wealth. Margaret, wearing an overly ornate modern gown, moved from group to group. Behind her, Emily looked beautiful, but restless. Ryan constantly adjusted his suit collar, flashing the Rolex Daniel bought him, making sure everyone noticed. "Oh, Linda, you must see this later," Margaret said loudly, ensuring nearby tables overheard. "My son-in-law Daniel is preparing a huge surprise tonight for Ryan. You know young people, expensive taste. Something with a bull or a horse logo," she added dramatically. "The price makes my head spin. But what can I do? Family comes first." The women smiled thinly, jealous, skeptical. "Impressive," one whispered. "He's usually so simple."
"You did bring the keys or the documents, right?" Emily Carter stepped closer, offering a sweet, hopeful smile. "Daniel, you look amazing tonight. You're so handsome. Where's Ryan's gift?" Ryan Wilson had already stretched out his hand, ready to receive what he imagined would be a luxury sports car key with a premium leather keychain. Daniel Carter looked at them one by one, a thin smile forming, sharp, almost cutting. "Of course, I never forget my promises, especially not in front of my mother-in-law's distinguished friends." Daniel slipped his hand into his tuxedo pocket and pulled out a long silver envelope that looked undeniably exclusive. "This is the surprise for all of you, especially for Ryan, who claims he wants to build a personal brand as a successful entrepreneur." Ryan snatched the envelope roughly. "Damn, even the envelope looks expensive. This has to be the ownership certificate, bro." Margaret Wilson laughed brightly. "Go on, Ryan, open it. Let everyone see how generous your brother-in-law is." All eyes in the ballroom turned toward Ryan. Mrs. Lillian, one of the socialites, even raised her phone to record the moment. With trembling hands fueled by excitement, Ryan tore the envelope open. But as he pulled out its contents, the color drained from his face. It wasn't a car certificate. It wasn't Lamborghini keys. It was a legal letter bearing the letterhead of Surya and Partners law firm. Below it was a photo of Ryan asleep at one of Daniel's logistics branch offices during working hours, complete with a detailed list of company losses caused by his negligence during his internship, totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars. But that wasn't the worst part. Behind it lay a document stamped in red. Notice of termination of company facilities. What is this?" Ryan's voice squeaked, on the verge of tears. "That is your gift, Ryan," Daniel said clearly, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "A gift called reality. The company has decided to withdraw all assets loaned to you, including the additional credit cards, the Rolex you're wearing, and starting tomorrow, you are no longer allowed to enter any company facilities." Margaret snatched the papers, her eyes bulging. "Daniel, what is this nonsense? You're humiliating us. Where's the sports car?" "The sports car?" Daniel chuckled softly, elegant but razor sharp. "Oh, it's already on the way, Margaret, but not for Ryan. I've just donated an amount equal to that car's price to a children's foundation in my father's name. I thought it would be far more useful than buying toys for a grown man who refuses to work." Emily grabbed Daniel's hand, her face shattered with shame. "Daniel, you're cruel. You did this in front of Mom's friends." Daniel gently pulled his hand away. "No, Emily. What's cruel is allowing your family to extort your own husband for the sake of empty prestige. Tonight, I came as a businessman withdrawing from a failed investment, and you," he looked at them all, "are the worst investment of my life." He turned to face Margaret, who now looked moments away from fainting as whispers spread among the socialites. "As per your ultimatum this morning," Daniel continued calmly, "I choose the exit. You have 24 hours to pack before my audit team arrives. Everything in that house belongs to the company." Daniel nodded politely to Mrs. Lillian and the other stunned guests. "My apologies for the interruption, ladies. Please continue your gathering. I have something far more important to attend to, my freedom." With steady steps, Daniel walked out of the ballroom. Behind him echoed Margaret's hysterical screams, Emily's sobs, and Ryan's curses, now public spectacle for Manhattan's elite. That night, the masks fell, and for Daniel, the air outside the hotel felt fresher than any oxygen he had breathed in the last 5 years. The next morning, the silence inside the luxury residence was suffocating. Nothing like its usual warmth. No smell of toasted bread, no classical music Emily used to play, only muffled sobs and hardened rage. Margaret sat on the sofa with an ice pack pressed to her forehead. The incident at the hotel had shattered the reputation she had built over decades. In the Diamond Circle Social Club WhatsApp group, her name had become a joke. Mrs. Lillian even openly shared the video of Daniel humiliating them, captioned, "Looks like the family ATM finally broke." "This cannot stand," Margaret snapped. "Emily, call your husband now. He's just acting on impulse. He wouldn't dare humiliate us like this. Tell him to come home and apologize to me." Emily stared at her phone, hands shaking. "He blocked my number, Mom. I called his office, but the secretary said Mr. Carter is unavailable. He's handling asset restructuring." Ryan, pacing near the window, suddenly shouted, "Hey, there are tons of black cars outside the gate. What's going on?" The doorbell rang, sharp, formal. The security guard looked confused as a group of well-dressed men entered, holding official documents. Leading them was a middle-aged man carrying a leather briefcase, Mr. Surya, Daniel's attorney. "Good morning, Mrs. Wilson, Miss Carter," he greeted flatly, as if reading a menu. "What do you want here? Where's Daniel?" Margaret barked, trying to reclaim her authority. "Mr. Surya will not be coming. I am here on behalf of Carter Logistics Group to execute asset security procedures." "What assets?" Ryan yelled. Mr. Surya opened the folder calmly. "According to our records, this house and all its contents, including furniture, decorations, and vehicles, are company property. And as Mr. Carter has officially withdrawn as the family facility provider, the occupants are given 24 hours to vacate." Margaret's face went pale. "You're insane! This is my daughter's house." "I'm afraid not," Mr. Surya replied, handing over the deed. "The property is registered under the company's name. Taxes and maintenance were paid by the corporation. With the termination of both business and family arrangements, your right to occupy this property has ended." Emily collapsed on the floor, her knees weak. "Please tell me this is a joke. Daniel wouldn't divorce me over a car, would he?" Mr. Surya looked at her with something close to pity and produced a second envelope, clean, white. "This, Miss Carter, is the divorce draft already signed by Mr. Carter. He does not claim any personal items, bags, jewelry, clothing, but the house and facilities must be returned to the company." "No, I won't allow this," Margaret screamed, clutching a crystal Italian vase worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. "I'm sorry, ma'am." One assistant gently placed a QR-coded sticker on the vase. "This is registered as headquarters office decor. Please do not move it." Ryan tried to protest. "I'll call the cops. This is robbery."
"Please do," Mr. Surya replied calmly. "Just remember, we also carry a full audit report on your use of company credit cards over the past 3 years, totaling over $1.2 million. If you wish to escalate this, Mr. Carter is prepared to file charges." Ryan froze. Cold sweat soaked his forehead. He didn't even have $20 in his wallet. All his cards had been blocked the night before. Emily collapsed on the floor, crying uncontrollably. Only now did she realize she had lived inside a beautiful but fragile bubble. She thought she was a queen, when in truth she was merely a guest in a palace built by the man she had just betrayed for the sake of her mother's greed. "Your time starts now," Mr. Surya said, checking his watch. "Tomorrow at 9 a.m., the locks will be changed." Assistants moved swiftly, labeling televisions, refrigerators, and even the dining table. Margaret sank into the sofa, staring blankly at the wall. Her arrogance had completely collapsed. Emily, through her tears, stared at the wedding photo still hanging on the wall. In it, Daniel smiled sincerely. Only now did she realize that smile was the most valuable thing she ever had, and she had traded it for a sports car brochure she would never touch. Carter Logistics Group, headquarters Manhattan. The glass building of Carter Logistics Group stood tall, reflecting the harsh Manhattan sky. Once, whenever Emily stepped into the lobby, it felt like an invisible red carpet was rolled out. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter," the staff would greet respectfully. The executive elevator was always ready. Today, she arrived in a ride-share, not a chauffeured sedan. She walked in with the last fragments of dignity salvaged from the ruins of her packed suitcases. At the reception desk, Diana, an employee of 4 years, was busy on the phone. Emily tapped the marble counter with her manicured nails. "Diana, I want to see Daniel Carter. Connect me to his secretary." Diana hung up, looked at her briefly, and offered a thin, formal smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am. May I ask who you are, ma'am?" Emily jolted. She dramatically removed her sunglasses. "You don't recognize me? I'm Emily Carter, his wife." Diana remained unfazed, tapping her tablet. "I'm sorry, Miss Carter. As per instructions from legal and HR this morning, your VIP status has been revoked. Your name is not on today's appointment list, and Mr. Carter has personally instructed that he will no longer receive visits from family members." "What?" Emily felt like she had been slapped in public. Employees passing by.
Just as Emily Carter stepped toward the sensor-controlled door, 2 broad-shouldered security officers moved in and blocked her path. "I'm sorry, Miss Carter," said one of the guards, the same man who used to carry her shopping bags to her car. "We're just doing our job. Without an access card or a formal invitation, you're not allowed to enter the work area." "This is outrageous!" Emily shouted, her voice rising with frustration. "Do you even know who I am? I'm the one who managed the house where Mr. Carter lived." "I'm sorry, ma'am," Diana cut in, her voice slightly firmer, trying to calm the situation. "We all know what's been happening. Mr. Carter is a very good boss to us. He works day and night in this building. We've also heard how you and your family treated him. Here, we respect Mr. Carter for his achievements, not because of who his wife was. If you don't have an appointment, please leave the lobby." Emily fell silent. Diana's words cut deeper than Daniel's divorce papers ever could. So they had all known. They knew how often Emily called Daniel just to ask for money. They knew how frequently Ryan Wilson showed up at the office to borrow company vehicles just to show off on social media. All this time, they respected her only because Daniel asked them to, never because she deserved it. At that moment, the elevator doors opened. Daniel Carter stepped out with a group of Japanese executives who clearly looked like major investors. He looked refreshed, wearing an elegant navy blue suit, smiling lightly as he explained something about the development of a new port terminal. "Daniel! Daniel!" Emily screamed from behind the security line. Daniel paused for a brief second and turned toward the voice. Their eyes met. For a fleeting moment, Emily hoped to see anger or pain, anything that proved Daniel still cared. But what she saw was far worse. Absolute indifference. Daniel looked at her the way one looks at a stranger causing a disturbance in public. No hatred, no love, just polite emptiness. He turned back to his guests, nodded apologetically for the interruption, and continued walking toward the exit, without saying a single word to Emily. "Daniel, please listen. Mom is sick." "Daniel, Ryan wants to change," Emily shouted again, but her words were swallowed by the soft hiss of the automatic glass doors behind him. Emily collapsed to her knees on the cold marble lobby floor. The mask of the Grand Lady had finally shattered into pieces. She realized that the social status, respect, and luxury she had enjoyed were nothing more than reflections of a son named Daniel Carter. Without him, she was just an ordinary woman, one who couldn't even pass through the lobby of her own husband's building. In a corner of the lobby, several female staff members she used to criticize for their clothing now looked at her with pity. That look hurt far more than any insult. Emily grabbed her phone, hoping for a message from her mother that might give her strength. Instead, she found a text from Margaret Wilson. "Emily, come home now. The electricity and water collectors are here. They say the utilities have been cut for non-payment this month. Where is your money?" Emily laughed hysterically in the middle of the lobby. Money. She didn't even know where Daniel had kept his savings all these years. The freedom she once bragged about, the freedom to control her husband, had turned out to be the most real prison of all. She had never learned to stand on her own. Somewhere far from the city. The road toward the mountains that morning was quiet and empty. Daniel deliberately chose a route far from city noise. He wasn't driving a flashy yellow Lamborghini. Instead, beneath his hands was a 1980 Toyota Land Cruiser FJ40, rebuilt piece by piece over years in secret at a small workshop. Tough, reliable, full of soul. Exactly like the life he wanted now. Daniel pressed the accelerator. The low growl of the V6 engine gave him a sense of security he had never felt in his in-laws' house. For 5 years, he had been forced to fit into Margaret Wilson's socialite expectations, reduced to an accessory for someone else's arrogance. He turned on the radio. A soft blues song filled the cabin. It felt as if a 1-ton weight had finally evaporated with the exhaust fumes. One sports car for a brother-in-law, or freedom for a lifetime, Daniel murmured with a thin smile. The easiest decision I've ever made. Meanwhile, on the other side of reality, in a dusty, cramped 2-story rental house far from luxury, Margaret Wilson sat on an old suitcase, her face flushed red. "Ryan, you're a man, and all you do is sit there. Carry those boxes upstairs," she shouted. Her voice no longer carried authority, only the desperation of a woman who had lost everything. Ryan, now wearing only a tank top and shorts, looked disheveled. The glow from expensive skincare treatments was gone. "You think I'm a laborer? I'm tired, Mom. This is your fault, threatening Daniel like that. Now we end up in this dump." "What did you say?" Margaret stood and pointed at her son. "You were the one who begged for a sports car. I was helping you. You're useless. Expensive education, yet you can't earn a single dollar." Emily sat in a corner, surrounded by piles of branded handbags that now looked like trash in the narrow room. No one from her old social circle replied to her messages.
Mrs. Lillian had even blocked her after Emily tried to borrow money for rent. Emily opened one of her Hermes bags, once her pride, planning to sell it. Inside, she found a small note from Daniel she had never noticed before. "These items are real, Emily. I bought them because I loved you, but without honesty and respect, they'll only become a heavy burden for you to carry alone." Emily crushed the note in her hand and sobbed. Losing Daniel wasn't just about losing money. It was losing the only person who had ever loved her unconditionally. 6 months later, Manhattan. 6 months after the divorce storm and eviction, Manhattan had already forgotten. For society pages, it was old gossip. For Daniel, it was incubation for something greater. That night, the New York Green Logistics Awards were held. Daniel Carter was no longer just a port logistics businessman. He was now a pioneer of renewable energy logistics fleets in the United States. His name appeared on the list of the year's most influential entrepreneurs. As his luxury sedan stopped at the entrance of a 5-star hotel, a valet in a maroon uniform hurried over. "Good evening, sir. Welcome." Daniel stepped out. As his polished leather shoes touched the marble floor, he recognized the silhouette of the valet. Slouched shoulders, awkward movements, hair no longer dyed blonde. It was Ryan Wilson. The man who once dreamed of a Lamborghini for personal branding now spent his nights parking cars for people he once looked down on. Ryan looked up to take the keys. Their eyes met. Mr. Carter," Ryan stammered, pale and trembling. Daniel showed no surprise. He looked at Ryan the way he looked at a streetlight, present but emotionally irrelevant. Daniel pulled out a $10 bill and slipped it into Ryan's uniform pocket. "Work hard, Ryan. At least now you know what it feels like to earn your own money," Daniel said calmly, almost kindly. He walked inside without waiting for a reply. Inside the lobby, Daniel noticed 2 familiar figures, Emily and Margaret. They hadn't been invited. They were sitting in the cafe, likely hoping to make new connections. Their appearances had changed drastically. Margaret no longer wore real diamonds, only faded imitation jewelry. Emily looked thin, wearing an old dress Daniel had bought 2 years ago, now hanging loosely on her fragile frame. Emily stood up when she saw him, tears filling her eyes, but stopped when she noticed Daniel's assistance in security detail. The distance between them was no longer physical, it was social and dignified. Daniel nodded politely. "Hello, Emily. Hello, Mrs. Wilson. I hope you're well." Margaret forced a smile. "Daniel, dear, I've been ill lately. Ryan is struggling to find work. Maybe you could help just a little?" Daniel raised his hand gently. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I now invest only in things that have integrity, and as per your ultimatum back then, I left your house and took my life with